Good evening, Western Standard viewers, and welcome to this week's edition of Hannaford, a political show of the Western Standard. With me today, I have Yaroslav Baran returning to the show. Yaroslav Baran is a political consultant and the founder of the Pendulum Group in Ottawa. He keeps an eye on what's going and is here to explain it to Western Standard viewers today.
Good to be back.
Big developments, Yaroslav. What do you say? He's had the end of the deal with Mr. Singh. He's had a campaign, senior staff resign, campaign director. Kind of important, I guess, when you're looking at an election in a year. There's still the legacy of that awful by-election result in Toronto. And I get the impression that it wasn't that friendly at the cabinet retreat. So, how is the end of the confidence and supply agreement with Mr. Singh going to affect how Mr. Trudeau goes forward from here?
Well, it is a significant development. First, I want to be clear not to overstate it. It does not mean there's going to be an election this fall. There will not be an election this fall. So anybody lighting their hair on fire thinking, oh my God, yeah, that changes everything. No, it doesn't change everything. It doesn't mean we should we should start working out our forearms to get ready to pound lawn signs. And in the short term, there's not going to be an early election, at least a very early election, but it does change the dynamic significantly. First of all, the government is now going to have to be careful and avoid unnecessary confidence votes. So the NDP Liberal agreement was basically the NDP pledging, we will keep you guys afloat until the statutory next election, October 2025. We will vote confidence. In exchange, you will give us the following things: dental care, the pharmacare, et cetera, so we will sustain you. You implement part of our platform. That was a deal. That's now gone, which means confidence cannot be taken for granted. Now, make no mistake, the Liberals do not want an early election. Their polling is in the toilet, and it has been for a year and a half. So the Liberals will do whatever they can to avoid an election. They're not going to take risks. They're not going to roll any dice. So that means minimizing confidence votes as much as they can. What does that mean practically? Things like, when you're at government, especially a fairly long in the tooth government, which I think is fair to say that this one is, and you're going into your last year, the last season before an election, it would have made sense to prorogue Parliament, open with a new throne speech, the trumpets, the red carpets, the Governor General reads the government's agenda. Yeah. You get a monopoly on media coverage, so you get to set the conversation. That's probably off the table now because that leads to a confidence vote. Parliament votes, do we accept this agenda or not? So that's one practical example of the kinds of confidence votes the government is going to try to avoid. There's a fall economic statement every year, and sometimes it's a statistical update. Here's the inflation rate, here's unemployment, here's what's going on. Sometimes it's basically a mini budget, and usually it's a mini budget. So there are new measures, confidence votes that come out of that. So these are the kinds of things the government is going to be thinking, okay, we've got to be really careful here. We want to minimize all risks that the government could fall, because they know that if the government falls and there's an election, they're toast. Not just toast, but they're going to lose 2/3 of their seats minimum.
I hear talk of maybe being knocked down to 25 seats. That was somebody's poll last week. They were knocked down to 34 in 2011 by Mr. Harper. Is that really feasible? They could go that low?
I'd be surprised if it hit the 20s, but there are very sophisticated systems that do algorithmic seat projections based on available polling. So this is not just somebody kind of fantasizing about what they'd like to see. Really sophisticated stuff doing this kind of modeling. And the latest modeling that I saw from 338canada.com, which somebody I put a lot of credence in, has the Liberals projected to win about 48 seats right now.
Okay.
And that's a huge drop. And I mean, back at the beginning of summer, the projections were 60 seats, 64 seats. So even a significant drop just over the course of this summer. So it's going to be, I mean, the polls are showing that the Liberals are in for a serious bruising.
So what do you think has done that?
It's oh boy, where to begin? You ask anybody, and they've got their own reason why they no longer have confidence in this government, why they don't like the prime minister anymore, and whatever. And I'm not going to say he's universally derided, but you can feel it in the air, even among liberal supporters, lifelong liberal voters. We're starting to hear more and more, gosh, I just can't vote for the guy anymore. I just can't vote for them. Or liberals themselves saying, the signs are all there. The writing is on the wall. The best thing we could do, the best thing they can do is get a new leader, because then they'll have a fighting chance. So these are normal conversations now.
Or is his policies that is the problem here?
In fairness, every government eventually wears out its welcome. It's a fact of life. You can't reign forever. And 9 years is a pretty healthy run. But the question then is, what does a party do about that? You either try to remake your image, you try to adjust to the mood of the country and toggle and reposition your policy, or the leader resigns and you elect a new leader to put a fresh face on things. But we're not really seeing any of those things. And that is why we've seen this sustained drop in popularity for the Liberal government, because they've been offering more of the same in response to a clear signal from the public that they're not buying it anymore.
Is there actually still time for the Liberal Party to replace its leader?
If there's a will, there's a way. Look at what just happened south of the border. There was a very quick consensus that, oh my goodness, Mr. Biden can't be at the helm of the ticket again. And they figured out a very quick way to do it. And there's way more at stake in American politics than there is in Canada. There's way more money involved. There's way more interest involved. There's way more global significance involved. So if they can do it, anybody can do it. It comes down to what the caucus thinks is the right thing to do, what the chief advisors, what the fundraisers, they need to make those decisions. And right now, there's a lot of grumbling, especially after that Toronto by-election, that the Liberal Party has no business losing ever, and they lost. So that started a lot of grumbling, but that grumbling has not taken the next step of the whole caucus saying, come on, like, you got to go.
Now, you made it very clear that you couldn't have been more emphatic that there won't be an election soon. Mm-hmm. And you've said why it wouldn't be in the interests of the Liberal Party to push it that way. Mm-hmm. But then, I mean, they're not a majority in the House. If the other three parties ganged up on them, it could happen. So you're still very sure that it is not going to happen. So why isn't it?
Why is that? I'd be really surprised.
We want.
Yeah, look, the Conservatives want an election. I'm a conservative, you know that. The Conservatives want an election. They're high in the polls. They've got depending on the poll, between a 14-point and a 21-point lead over the Liberals. That's a really nice place to be. All the modeling, all the polling suggests a resounding majority for the Conservatives if there's an election to be held today. So obviously the Conservatives want one, and that's why they've been baiting Jagmeet Singh. That's why we saw a public challenge from Mr. Poilievre to Mr. Singh to tear up his deal, and he took the bait. But what about the other parties? The NDP, they're a complex bag. Their fundraising is not strong. It's the weakest among all the sort of mainstream parties, all the national parties. It's consistently fairly weak. They finally clawed their way out of debt, but they're basically starting at zero. So any election essentially means borrowed money. So they want to push that off as much as they can to give them time to fundraise. Their polling is also volatile. They've spent most of the last year with the polling projections suggesting at best status quo. So you don't want to spend a whole bunch, like millions of dollars of borrowed money just to, at best, win as many seats as you currently have. Over the last couple of weeks, the polling suggests maybe they'd pick up at the seats. So they're going to be keeping an eye on that, but you don't want to roll the dice over one good poll. So the NDP are still cautious because it's still basically status quo for them if there's an election. Or worse, the Bloc Québécois is the most indifferent to an election. They can't form government. They never will form government. They only run candidates in one riding. So they are the most indifferent. They operate less on politics and political expediency and more on policy. What can we get out? Liberal government, whatever. Conservative government, whatever. What can we get out of you? That's how they operate. That's how they think. And that's why, interestingly, ironically, the Bloc Québécois is now going to be the easiest potential dance partner for the Liberals. Because Liberals know election, take it or leave it. The Bloc Québécois won't care either way. So they are the most likely to support, for example, a federal budget that the Liberals put forward next spring.
Actually, what you're saying is that the Separatist Party is the one that's going to keep the most unpopular government we've had in decades in office.
Interestingly, that's the way it's shaping up. If the Liberals survive the next budget, it's probably going to be with the support of the Bloc Québécois, because they've larded up the budget with a whole bunch of stuff that the Separatist Party is asking for. So isn't that going to be an interesting dynamic? Mind you, for the Conservatives and the NDP, that's a godsend, because they can then go to the election next summer saying, okay, so these guys whom the country does not like anymore at all are being propped up by whom? The party that wants to tear up the country. Not a great way for the Liberals to start an election campaign.
It certainly isn't. I'm sure the Conservatives have thought of that, but in case they didn't, we're going to send them your comments.
We'll send them a recording.
Look, can Justin Trudeau actually hang on? I know we kind of went near there. Do you think that there is the right people within the party who could pull him down?
It's really tough to say. The general impression that one gets in Ottawa these days is that he can hang on for as long as he decides to hang on.
Well, what about this low morale within the government that you were speaking of? What does that look like in practical terms?
Yeah, morale is low, and they're getting trouble having volunteers. They're having trouble recruiting new people. The star staffers are always the first to leave. Whenever any political ship starts to sink, it's always the best people to leave first, because they've got the most options. They're the most attractive on the labor market. So then you're stuck with less experienced people and holes in staffing, and it just kind of starts to feed on itself. But the general consensus appears to be that he took the Liberal Party out of the wilderness. He's earned the right to stay for as long as he chooses to stay. Now, many Liberal MPs are quietly saying, but I hope he does go. But publicly, they're saying if he chooses to stay and fight one more election, that's his right. He's earned it.
Well, that is what they would say. But I mean, if you think of what you just said there, Yaroslav, he brought them out of the wilderness, and he's going to take them back into it. If you want to use the biblical analogy, it's like Moses bringing the Israelites out of the promised land.
and then back into the desert. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty damning thing.
Yeah, but Nigel, also traditionally, the different levers of forcing a party leader out are largely gone in Canadian politics overall, but especially in the Liberal Party. He hasn't left any independent power bases left. Mm-hmm. He no longer has an official Senate caucus. The group of elders who can tap you on the shoulder and say, "Young man, it's time to go for a walk and have a little chat." They're gone. He's broken down the regional power brokers. They're gone. He's eliminated them. Fundraising law in Canada means that there's not really any influence of big money anymore, where like in the States, in Washington, when the big donors say it's time to go, you have no choice. In Canada, corporations can't donate, unions can't donate, and individuals can only donate $1,700. So money doesn't talk in Canadian politics. It doesn't have the kind of ejection button leverage that we see in other countries. So there's not really anybody to force them out. There's no mechanism to do that. It's basically, if the caucus got together and said, "Look, this, this isn't working anymore. We're all going to lose our jobs if you stay at the helm of the party. Maybe. And it's heading in that direction, but it's not quite there yet.
It's interesting. You and I are both old enough to remember when that legislation came in, and we all thought that it would be a good thing if money didn't talk in Canadian politics. Well, right now, maybe I could make a case for it. Look, I want you to just sort of go in under the dome here and imagine that they made you an outrageously rich offer to advise them on how to get through the next election. Mr. Baran, put your conservatism on one side. You are the man. Tell us what to do, and we will do it. What would you tell them?
Well, I mean, until this Jagmeet Singh thing happened, I would have advised them start the new year with a throne speech. You want to reset the agenda and a monopoly on communicating your vision. That's kind of off the table now, but that would have been a good place to start. But most importantly, it's got the government is going to have to start to pay attention to the reasons why they're unpopular. In fairness, they've started to do that. They've figured out why, cost of living, cost of housing. So that they finally included in. The other parties have been talking about it for years. The government is finally clued in, and they're trying to do stuff there. The problem is it's too little, too late. They no longer have the credibility anymore. At least that's what it appears to be the case in the eyes of the public. So I'm not sure that there is any magic recipe to bring it back. They've started to do some of the only things available to them, which is borrowing policy proposals from the people who are popular. So they see Mr. Poilievre surging in the polls. And what has he been saying about housing? Well, maybe we cannot be increasing the population of Canada more quickly than we're building houses in Canada. The Liberals are starting to say, maybe that makes sense. Mr. Poilievre is saying we've got all kinds of surplus federal lands that are mothballed, just collecting cobwebs. Why don't we repurpose some of those for housing developments? Liberals have started to say the same thing. So they're starting to borrow the policies of the parties that are popular. But again, is it too little, too late? And there's always a risk, very fair risk, that voters are going to say, these guys actually believe that. That was their idea. You're kind of nicking that idea. Why would I vote for you if I can vote for the people who genuinely believe it and aren't just trying to emulate popular, smart, common sense ideas in a panic at the 11th hour?
Actually, Yaroslav, to the degree that the problems you've just mentioned are consequences of their own explicit policies. Borrow money, you get inflation. You find that you have problems in the home market. Well, it's these are things even people who aren't really interested in politics can put that together. But what about a good old-fashioned lie? Pierre Poilievre has a secret agenda, and they're going to make abortion hard to get, and they're going to, all the usual things. They're funded by the Russians. Doesn't have to be true.
Yeah. Brace yourself, Nigel. We're going to hear a lot more of that over the next year.
So they're going to go dirty.
Yeah, it's going to get really dirty. It's going to get nasty. It's going to get very nasty, probably nastier than we've ever seen it before. Yes. And real quick, because that's fear-mongering sometimes is the only card you have left. And in politics, parties play whatever cards they have. If you're a government and you desperately want to cling to power and you see yourself going out, you're going to play whatever cards you have. That is basically their only card left. They're going to portray Mr. Poilievre as an alt-right, far-right, whatever, you name it, anti-this, anti-that, anti the other thing. I've seen all these monikers come up against my party over the years. I've been involved in politics for 30 years, as you know. I've seen it all leveled against us over the years, and we're going to see it all again. So get ready for it. And there's some new dimensions too. I mean, I'm used to allegations from other parties of, anti-this, anti-that, or whatever. But now we're going to see new dimensions about foreign interference. He's a front for this foreign hostile government or that foreign hostile government or whatever. Brace yourself. It's coming, and it's going to be a not very pleasant political season between now and either late spring or fall of next year when the election is.
Well, on that unhappy note, I guess we should conclude because we're out of time, and it's great to see you again, Yaroslav.
Always a pleasure, Nigel.
I think we're
Anytime.
going to be seeing quite a lot more of you in the days and months to come. So thank you for this.
All right, take it easy.
For the Western Standard, I'm Nigel Hannaford.
If the name Ted Byfield brings back fond memories, well, we got a party coming up for you guys. On September 25th, Toasting Ted is what it's called. It's going to honor a great conservative who published Alberta Report news magazine. It's going to be bagpipes, singing, live auction stakes, speeches by Premier Smith, Preston Manning, Stephen Harper, quite a lineup. The Western Standard is the final incarnation or the latest incarnation of Alberta Report that Ted Byfield founded. And I mean, he was a great Albertan. He really made his mark on this province. And this evening of celebration for him is really going to be outstanding. You get there, toastingted.ca. That's the website. You can get your tickets. This one's going to sell out. I mean, again, if you want to see Smith, Manning, Harper, all in one spot, one night, be sure to get there.